techniques that are involved in wiresmithing: the cut and wrap technique and the frame stacking technique. So if you're ready, let's begin. We begin by cutting 3 pieces of 16 gauge wire, 3 inches each. Once we get these 3 pieces cut, we're going to straighten them a little bit and then stack them together using the frame stacking technique. Now this is a basic frame stack. We have 3 wires. 2 of these wires will make up the prongs, and the 3rd wire will make up the pin finding. In this case, it might be used as a pendant or something else. So we'll straighten these up by just moving our fingertips over them, straighten the wires out a bit so that they'll sit next to one another really tightly. Now that I have all of my wire cut to 3 inches each, I put some painter's tape on either end to hold the bundle together. Now this is going to help us be able to do all of the work to it. We're going to be able to cut, wrap, we'll be able to mark out the wire where we're going to make our cut and wrap. I place it here, and I'm going to find the center of this, which is 1.5 inches. I'm going to make a mark. Now, just for this purpose, I want you to go to the left of that center mark 1/4 inch, and I want you to go to the right 1/4 inch. This represents our cut and wrap area. We're going to cut from this mark here all the way over to this mark here. It might be helpful also to carry these over to the sides so that you know where you're going to be cutting. So now that we've got our wire marked, it's time to do some cutting. Now, when I cut, I'm going to be using my flex shaft, and in the end of my flex shaft, I've put a grinding tip. Now, this is a very hard pumice material that I've inserted into the end of my flex shaft. This is going to be good enough to cut across that, and we're going to cut on 3 sides. We're going to cut across all 3. And then we're also going to cut the sides of it. This is going to get rather loud, but it only takes a few minutes to do this. It takes very little time to do it. So let's set it here on our work surface. Another thing I want you to remember is we're going to be creating a lot of friction on this wire. In order to protect your fingertips from burning, I want you to use a cloth or even a glove or something to be able to hold the metal in place as you're doing the grinding. So we'll turn our grinder on now. Before we do this, I want you to know that we're not going to be cutting a whole lot of material away. We're only going to be cutting a slight groove across all of these. So keep that in mind as you're cutting. You're not cutting all the way through, you're cutting about 1/4 of the way through the metal. So 1/4 of the depth of the wire is what we're going to cut away. So let's turn our machine on. We'll begin cutting. So here's the cut that we've just made. Now we haven't cut much of the wire away. We've only cut a groove into that. I'm not sure if the camera would pick this groove up, but it's a very slight groove, and this groove is going to hold the wire in place. Now, another thing with using that grinding tip is this rough surface. That's a secondary way that this is going to hold this bundle together and it won't move. So now let's take and do the sides of this, and we'll do both sides. Same thing, we'll hold it in place with a cloth because we're getting a lot of friction from this. Turn our tool on and we'll make our second cut. So you don't need to take much of the metal away. It cuts fairly quickly, so be careful, because if you cut too deep into here, you're going to cause your prongs to be too weak. So that's 2 of the cuts, and let's finish off by cutting the 3rd side now. And then we'll go ahead and wrap. So as you can see, we've cut away the metal in the center portion of this. Now what we do next is we're going to wrap that. We're going to take a piece of 18 gauge half round wire, and we are going to wrap that groove. And we want to make sure that the wrap wire stays within that groove that we've just created. So we'll start by getting the first wrap started, and we'll continue this wrap so that it fits through that groove from one end of the groove to the other end. I'm holding some good tension on this wire as I make, because I really want a nice tight wrap all the way across this. Now let's set it so that it's really tight up against our groove. And then we'll clip the ends off with some wire cutters. Pull the end up here. Cut one. And now the extra wire. Set that aside. Now something I like to do also is I like to put the cut side against a bench block. And I like to tap it a couple of times with a rawhide mallet to make sure that it's set really well. So now, here's the real test. Let's remove our tape ends. And we're going to see if the bundle moves at all. And the tape comes off really well. See? So now here's the test. See, it's not going to move. The wrap is not moving at all. I'm putting a lot of pressure on it, but along with this, if we were to move these out to where we would maybe position our prongs, see, nothing moves. You can't pull this apart. So it's almost as if you've soldered this together. The whole piece is strong and sturdy, and all that's held together with is a cut and wrap technique that's acting like solder. That's the basics of the cut and wrap technique. You'll notice that as we did that project, that we took 3 wires and we stacked them together before we cut and wrapped them. That is the basis for the frame stacking technique. In each project that we'll do, we'll take wires and we'll stack them together. 2 of those wires will become prong wires. The rest of the wires will be used for things such as pin findings, bails, even the arms to a cuff bracelet. So here's what we started off with. This was our piece that we cut and wrapped. Now these are the 3 wires that we used. But you'll notice that here in this pendant, that these very same wires are the same that were used in our example. If you look closely here at the back, you'll notice here is where we wrapped the wires together. These middle wires here, that's these middle wires here, they became the bail to the piece. The prongs were made and cut on the front of the stone. So it's not very difficult. This frame stacking technique is a very simple technique to use. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at the basics of wiresmithing. If you'd like to learn more, please visit us online at our website at www.wiresmithing.com. You can even go to our wire wrapping website at www.macjewels.com. Till next time, my name is Jim McIntosh, and remember, practice, practice, practice.